Created and produced on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill Paugussett, Niantic, and the Quinnipiac, in the land we all call home, Connecticut. We hope that from wherever you are, you take a moment to acknowledge and honor the native people whose land you are on and the history of the place you are in.
The International Festival of Arts and Ideas stands in solidarity with Black and Brown communities and other groups who are targeted and abused by unjust systems of oppression. We support all movements working to decenter white voices and dismantle white supremacy. We are actively seeking to dismantle systemic racism, and we raise our voices with those in our community who are already engaged in this vital work. We commit to working alongside you to create transformative change in New Haven and in our global community.
Welcome to the International Festival of Arts and Ideas. Thank you for wearing your face mask over your nose and mouth the entire time you are here at the University Theater. We ask you to note the several exit doors located to the front, sides, and rear of the theater. These doors can be used to exit the theater in the highly unlikely event of an emergency. Please note the use of cameras and recording devices at any time during this performance is prohibited. Finally, please unwrap any candy and turn off any cell phones or electronic devices which might make noise during the performance. Thank you. Enjoy the show.
Patrick Dunn. If you have just joined us for the first time, I use predominantly he, him pronouns, but respond to anything that is respectful. And I am excited to introduce our technically our third program, but our second conversation of the day. Again, welcome back to the Day of Action for Racial Justice, presented by the New Haven Pride Center with support from the International Festival of Arts and Ideas. And so our second panel of the day is titled Pushing Back Against Invisibility, Queer Asian Representation. So we're very excited to have this conversation. We have a fabulous group of panelists backstage, and Director of Youth Services and co-founder of Black Lives Matter New Haven, Ala Oshimare, is actually going to be our moderator, so I will bring her out to get us going. To say, if you are watching us, joining us virtually, and you have a question, please comment wherever you are watching from, and we will keep our eye on comments for questions for our Q&A. And if you are here in the audience with us, we will also accept Q&A from you at the end of the conversation. So with that, Allah, I will let you take over.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Again, thank you so much for joining us here and at home. And I am very honored to be the moderator for this next panel. And with that, I'm going to introduce our panel of experts. Anthony Buell. Varun Khater Sharma. And last, but definitely not least, Valor. Thank you so much. I am really excited to be on the stage, and thank you for allowing me to be in your space today.
Thank you.
Before we get started, I would love if you folks share with our audience your names and your pronouns. I'll model. My name is Ala Ashimare, and my pronouns are they and she.
I'm Valor Nunziato, and my pronouns are they, he.
I'm Varun Khater Sharma, and I use any pronouns.
I'm Anthony Buell, aka Lucia Virginity, pronouns he, she, they.
Thank you. We want to, again, just make sure that we center and ground ourselves in this time today. And starting off with a very simple question. What brings you here today? What would you like to leave with your audience? What would you like to leave with your audience about why you feel or felt the need to be on this panel today?
So personally, as a younger queer Asian person, I felt the need to be here because there aren't many open opportunities nor spaces for queer Asian people to speak up about their truth and their experiences and their journeys, because there's so many either assumptions or stories made about us or erasure altogether. And like I said, I'm a young queer Asian person. I'm 15 years old and I'm still in high school. And I have a story to tell, and I have a purpose being here and things to share.
Thank you.
Well, I love an opportunity to wear a cute outfit, first of all. And yeah, and I've been in spaces at the intersection of being queer and Asian outside of Connecticut, but was really excited to see this here at where I was born and raised, and to connect with the two of you, and I don't know, just I think there's a lot of, like you said, just a lot of wisdom, a lot of in our stories, and I hope I can share something that
Love sharing.
that helps you think differently, and
I like to share life experiences, obviously with others and new people. Mine's kind of an interesting story to share, is because I'm Filipino, but I was raised Italian and Irish because I'm adopted. So I never grew up in a household of Filipinos. You put me in a room with Filipinos, I wouldn't know. Put me in a room with Italians, I feel right at home. So it's interesting conversation with others, but people get a different perspective, because I don't see myself, even though I am Filipino, I really don't see myself as an Asian. I grew up more Italian and Irish. I don't know if that goes against what our panels today, but I always tell people I feel like a can of condensed milk on the shelf. You know what it is, but you don't know what to do with it. I don't really put myself in a box. I'm adopted. I'm American. Yes, I have Filipino genes, but I grew up more American than Filipino. So, be yourself. That's how I live my life. And to answer your question in the back, because I asked down the line your ages, I'm actually 40. I just turned 40 2 months ago. So
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to say that all our identities are valid, and it just leads into my next question around Asian representation and your identities being forced into a monolith. And because we have a very intergenerational panel here, I'm very interested in what are some of the ways that you are internally, for your own individual selves, working to fight the being forced into a monolith, or forced into a particular stereotype of what Asian identity is, or what folks who are not of Asian descent or identity tell you that you are supposed to be? How are you every day working against those stereotypes?
Well, I can start this off by saying that, for me personally, I go to a school that is very mixed across the board. However, I'm still the only Asian, openly Asian kid in my school. And it's interesting because I once had a very interesting conversation about people of color representation in queer media. And I brought up Love, Simon as an example because that was mainstream. That was so mainstream, if I'm aware. I remember at the time I heard so many people talking about it, and I remember looking on screen and being I can't relate to these people. And that's not a bad thing. Queer stories are queer stories, and I believe they need to be shared more, way more, and Love, Simon was a great starting point. However, I had an interesting conversation with someone who wasn't a person of color, and they were telling me that it's harder to put your stories on screen. I asked them why, and they said, because there's not many people like you. And I was like, that's interesting of you to say. It's not there's queer people of color. There's queer people of color. We exist. You just refuse, or like you just haven't seen us. You haven't listened to us because you, as a non-person of color, whether you subconsciously are in this or not, you're in your head about like what is your experience like, and you can't connect to us people of color really on like an experience level. I'm aware of that. It's just that queer stories need to be shared more, especially with people of color. I watched with my mom last night Fire Island, and
Wow.
yeah, with my mother,
How was that?
who is a cishet white woman in her 60s, and I was watching this with her, and two of the main cast are Asian, and it was interesting because she was pointing out, how do you feel with these like characters on the screen? Like there's queer Asian characters on screen. I was like, yeah, that is pleasant to see. It's a shame that like there isn't such spotlight shown on queer people of color media.
Wow, there's so much I want to respond to. Do you mind if I?
Go ahead.
I just want to say, first of all, I've never heard someone say openly Asian before, so thank you for that. I never thought about just, the ways that we, sometimes hide, use that language to describe the ways that, really we often do hide our Asian identities in spaces. There's actually, I think there's a lawyer, Kenji Yoshino, from Yale, who wrote this book Covering that talks a lot about this. I also, what you said around there's not many of you, right, that comment, it's now, that sounds so ridiculous, but I remember growing up being your age and thinking I was the only one. It took me a little bit, until my late teens to really, come to terms with my queerness, but I remember thinking I'm the only queer South Asian person in the whole world. And there's like over 1 billion of right. South Asian people, so it's just like statistically doesn't make sense. But
there's got to be some queers. There got to be some
right.
queers.
But I think the lack of representation really makes. I mean, I think makes it to the world, that makes it seem like we don't exist. But also I think the worst part is to ourselves, right? This feeling like like this. I have to hide this part of myself, or like there's not other people like me. To answer your question, though, Ala, I'm totally going on a tangent here, and I want to talk about Fire Island too. We need to talk about Fire Island. I was so happy you brought it up. Why did I come here today? I think, or was that your question, or
how are you like actively fighting against being forced into stereotypes, or your identity being forced into a stereotype?
Yeah, I think for so long I tried to fight against the stereotypes, and even in that, I was giving them power. Right. I realized. And so I think I'm at a point now where I'm no longer trying to disprove anyone, and I'm sorry, I keep hitting the mic, but I'm no longer trying to disprove anyone, I'm just trying to be. Yes. And I think that's, and I do, take pride in being South Asian, and also I think I relate to what you shared around growing up here in the US, I also, there's a lot about my culture that I'm not connected to. And
same with me.
And so, I can understand Hindi and Punjabi, but I can't speak it fluently. Right. I don't have a lot of friends who are also South Asian. So I think I am proud to be Asian, proud to be South Asian, proud to be Punjabi, and to be part of this, the legacy, to have the sort of intergenerational, the ancestral wisdom that lives in me. Yes. I'm not trying to also constantly fight a stereotype. I'm just trying to exist as at the intersections of my identities that I am, because this is just me, right? And I'm just trying to be a vessel for whatever what I like for on this planet, and to serve my purpose. And so I think that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Like you said, live on this planet to serve your purpose, not anybody else's. Growing up, years ago, just realizing or just seeing is back in years ago, it's the big question was, you're gay, you're queer, but now these days it's oh, okay, because it's so moving forward and people just accept them for themselves, but it takes a long time because if it's, you know, religion, politics, culture, there's always something that's holding them back. And that's the outside world, but if you can find the comfort, the happiness and love in your own household, I mean, that makes it so much easier. You know, some households say like, okay, you're gay, you know, but just be careful. I mean, it was tough for my mother. She's Italian, hardcore Italian. So it was. She said, "It's fine that you're gay." You know, I had gay friends when I was younger. I was like, okay, but it's different when you're a parent, when you have a child. So looking from their perspective, her perspective, it took a while for her, but my father, he accepted right away. So he was the eldest of 3 brothers, but once when his brothers were born, his parents didn't really focus on him much. So my dad was on his own a lot. So even he felt being the only child of 3, let's put it that way. So when I came to terms myself of being gay, he accepted because he didn't want to be, unfortunately, like his parents, being, you know, pushed to the side. So it was like, this is my only son. I'll accept him regardless of his sexuality because I don't want to be like my parents. So I saw it from his perspective. But having a positive, loving family, you know, household, growing up will make it easier in life, trying to find yourself within the world, because there are obviously those who are pushing back against justice, you know. So, but I just always say, you know, live your life. They're not paying your bills. Don't mind them, you know. So.
Thank you for that. I also never heard openly Asian, and I think that so many identities can resonate with that. And that leads me to the constant pull that I and myself feel as a Black, queer, non-binary woman, that I'm always forced to choose which identity first. And so I ask one more so because I'm just looking for answers for myself, how not to have to continue to move in that vein or find myself falling into, I'm Black first, I'm queer first. And so my question to you folks is, how, or rather, what is the emotional effect of having to constantly either come out or center another identity instead of being able to be your intersectional selves? And I ask, how does it feel? Because I found that when folks can connect emotions to things, it helps them either shut up and get out the way or to be better. And so I ask, what does it feel like when folks are telling you that you can't be an Asian drag queen, or that you must pick gender, or what is more important to you first, your cultural identity or your queer identity, or what's bigger for you? How do those kinds of questions affect you internally, so that way folks can hopefully just move outside of that need to socially construct your identity?
Oh, so I want to say I connect with you because I'm also adopted, and part of my family is heavily, heavily Italian, my father's side. And I grew up with a single mother. I never really knew my father that well. Anyways, he wasn't really connected to me. The most we do is we'd go to these like Christmas holiday parties around like Christmas, show up, eat some food, leave.
A lot of food for Christmas, huh?
Yeah. And I remember when I came out as trans and queer, my mom started being like, we're no longer going to those parties. We're no longer going to any of those parties. And I look back on that now and I'm like, is it because she's even more ashamed? Like, I realize my family is incredibly accepting. They love me. But I know subconsciously they hold these heteronormative ideals and like everything like that. And it hurts me. we stopped going to those parties. And it's not like I liked those parties, because I knew I'm not like a lot of these people sitting at this table right now. I'm the queer Asian kid that they speak 2 words to at most, saying, "How are you doing?" And then that's it, because they think there's nothing they can connect with me on a lot of things, because probably I am queer and Asian and much younger than these generations as well. And it's difficult, because when I realized that, like, my father no longer knew what to do with me. He didn't know what to do with me, because at first he thought he had this shy young daughter who didn't really like talking and that he could bring to go shopping once in a while. Now he has this queer son who's not afraid to be who he is, but he doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know who I truly am. What does he do with that? And he doesn't want to take the time to understand who I am either. And I've gone through a lot in my life despite being very young. Like, I went through severe bullying throughout my entirety of, like, elementary to middle school. Like, I was bullied for being both Asian and queer. Like, those were the things people would bully me for. And I specifically remember one time being like, a kid asked me, "Aren't you supposed to be homophobic?" And I was like, interesting. I have my glasses on, and I don't think I would see a homophobic bone in my body, personally. But it is really hurtful to, like, people who try and separate these ideas so far because of the stereotypes. The stereotype, a big stereotype being that Asians are homophobic. We are not. Queer Asian people exist. There are stereotypes being like, especially with older generations, like these people aren't accepting. Like, I personally wanted to take a trip to Japan with my sister, and my mom was like, "No, because you're queer. They're not accepting of queer people." Like, it's subconscious things like that that makes me feel conscious of my Asian identity and who I am as a queer Asian person in these, like, Venn diagram circles intersecting, but there's nothing in this small little middle, essentially.
Wow. That Venn diagram with nothing in the middle hit me right in my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I dealt with depression when I was younger. This is before it came out. Like I said, it took a while for my parents, especially my mom, to accept. But I also, I'm also a victim of suicide. So that really hit home for both my parents. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a crying out for help. It was just a lot of internal emotions that I was battling because, like you said, you were adopted. I grew up, Italian, Irish, Catholic, but we weren't hardcore Italians. We didn't go to church on Sundays. But there was a lot of pressure growing up. My parents were very well known in our town growing up. So, but everybody in town knew my parents. And they see me, it's like, "Oh, you're Doug and Carol's son." It's like, yes. In my mind, it's like, I do have a name.
Right.
Exactly.
So, I mean, and this is before I came out, or after I came out, they still was like, "Yes, still Doug and Carol's son." It's like, and I'm Tony. What can we talk about? I mean, there's more than just my parents, but the pressure of the society in my little bubble growing up, especially going to a Catholic high school. Yay! And what was right, what was wrong, had to be quote unquote perfect, and it got too much for me. And it was right before my 19th birthday in 2001. So, but anyways, I'm here.
Yes.
So it took a lot for myself to be accepting myself first. I mean, it was nice to have great to have my parents accepting, but it took a while for me, And I didn't come out. I mean, I would give a lot of credit to all the younger generation now these days who are coming out, being themselves, their the pronouns and the gender and all that. I had to wait until I was in college because I felt, okay, college, they won't discriminate or judge you, but for the first 18 years, I was like, okay, I'll wait. So, but, here.
Yes.
So.
And we're so happy you're here.
Thank you. So that was my partner.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many connections. It makes me think about when I went to college and it was the first time I felt I could live openly queer. But I felt like I had to choose between my identities. Because if I was gonna be out, I couldn't maintain relationships with my childhood friends in the South Asian community, because then they would out me to my parents. And so I made a choice, I chose to run away essentially from all the South Asian friends I had growing up.
You chose to be you.
And well, but I felt like I had to sacrifice a part of my community, and I don't regret the choice I made to be myself. But I wish I didn't have to give up those relationships, you know. And I think now, like my friends that I grew up with, they're all getting older, they're getting married, you know, and I'm no longer a part of that community, and I'm trying to now reconcile the two and try to, you know, but it's still, I think about, like, you know, like I have no friends from my childhood, and I do have I feel sad about that. And I wish that, you know, not that, you know, I love my chosen family now, and you know, my chosen family is so diverse, and but to have people, you know, that knew me from when I was a child, I think, I sometimes have a longing for that, and I think the other thing I was gonna say is, you know, I don't feel actually a lot of, it's only really around my family often that I feel that emotional toll of being queer and Asian. Otherwise, I'm myself, and I'm fabulous, and I don't, like, you know, and I don't, it doesn't, you know, I don't think about it, but it's when I'm around my family. And I remember recently, my brother his girlfriend is Filipino, and they invited us over for lunch a few weeks ago, and I remember going, and I love my brother's girlfriend, and I love her family, and I was so excited to spend time with them. And I remember getting ready that day, and I was, you know, putting, you know, like I had dangly earrings on, and my parents came to pick me up, and I remember seeing the disappointment in my mom's face at what I was wearing, because, you know, sort of, and you know, she said it, those earrings are girly, and I think it's because it's not even about being queer, it's about not conforming to gender roles.
Right.
To me, it's not about who I'm attracted to. It's actually, once I've begun to violate, right, this, like, you know, this idea of, you know, like I was, you know, assigned male at birth, and was told this, you know, so that's where it's more challenging, is to actually be trans, is where it's, I found more, I'm still struggling to figure out how can I be authentically myself in terms of my gender expression around my family, because I don't think they care about who I'm attracted to. They don't need to know, you know what I mean, for the most part. But it's how I show up, and it's how queer I feel comfortable expressing myself, and talking about my love for drag and makeup, and you know, and things that, not that that's all that being trans means, but it's so much of my culture now. It's the books I read, the TV shows I watch, you know, you know, the you know, club I went to last night. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to bring all of that to every space, and I feel like I have to sometimes check that at the door when I'm with family, and as my family, I have beautiful nieces and nephews, and they're you know, 2 are under a year old, and I have a 3-year-old niece, and I think that's really challenged me to actually start to work on my own internalized queer phobia, my transphobia, and want to show up authentically for them, so that they can see I have a role model of a queer and trans person in their family that they love, that so that they don't grow up with the same, internalizing the same stereotypes that I did, and so that I'm still on a journey. I still haven't figured it out, but I really feel a sense of responsibility for that next generation, even in my own immediate family, to be myself, so that they can be themselves, and that if they're not queer, I mean, I hope they're queer, but if they're not queer, like, they grow up loving queer people, and not, yeah.
Yeah, and it's
not bullying them.
normalized. It's
Yeah.
not, I'm loving you because you're my queer uncle. It's, you're my person, you're my cousin, and you're also queer or trans. It's the other way around where it's just normalized and like young folks don't even see it. And I really resonate with that. I felt as a former teen mother and a mother to someone going away to school that these last 8 years, it was really up to me to normalize my identity and the intricacies of it. So once my son wouldn't secretly hate me, first and foremost. I think like, I agree, I'm super queer in the world. Like I always say like, I'm so gay that my job makes me gayer. Like I've ascended. And then I go to a family function and I'm femme presenting more times than not. But when we're talking about gender roles and we're talking about things like that, that's when it comes up for folks. And I find myself withering, and I am not a person who just erases themselves. And so I feel that. I recently really noticed when I decided to not say something in a conversation that I was doing it for safety for myself and not because I didn't want to be the loudmouth, and because everyone knows that that's my job. But you know, I was actually trying to save myself because what they were doing was erasing me in that moment. Because I'm a femme presenting person, there's a whole conversation around gender and conforming that I was, every sentence I was being erased, and it just got overwhelming. Like, do I just let them, what do I do? And then the need to having to validate my non-binariness in that moment and having to come out in that moment felt so unsafe, and in a space where I'm very safe, physically, very safe, but emotionally not at all. So thank you for, and I say that to say that because queer folks, especially queer folks of color, this is an intersection that we are carrying and holding all day long in our sleep, when we eat, when we're at the grocery store, when we're with our families. This is not something that we get to separate, and our lived experiences are very different on this panel, but I think we've all resonated with the same thing. And that leads me into getting back to our title, pushing against invisibility. And for anyone watching who didn't denote the various points of being forced into invisibility that we've all just shared and our experiences of. So I'm gonna just get to it, right? Pushing back against invisibility is something that can sometimes be very unsafe, physically, emotionally. And I think about something that you said, Valor, and Varun, actually, that y'all felt like y'all were the only ones. But if you do the numbers, y'all community, especially when you get to combine the beautiful diaspora of y'all community, y'all are the majority. And so how insidious is the invisibility factor of queerness and folks of color? And so how are y'all, other than just being and living and experiencing y'all lives, y'all are a personification of pushing against invisibility? And I think about Lucia Virginia, your Lucia Virginity, and the fact that you are unfortunately, one of the only Asian American drag queens here in Connecticut. And every time you step in, you are making a little Asian person be seen and valid. Like, oh shoot, that's me up there.
Thank
You're welcome. I wish there was more Asian American drag queen performers. I did know one. I think she's now transgendered. She's still she gets if she gets comes back out, she'll still a performer, but like a drag queen, like you said about gender roles. After been doing for drag for 15 years, it's kind of fun to play with the gender roles because one day I could just be in shorts and flip flops and a tank top. The next day I'm prancing around in platform heels. So it's fun to do that showing the difference. But I would like to see more Asian American drag performers. I just a few months ago I went to a charity ball in New York. They have it always. I try to go every year, and I sat at a table with other Asian American Filipinos. They were drag queens, but they were from the West Coast. And the first thing they said, "You speak Tagalog," which is the native language. I said "saging," which means banana. My dad should have known I was gay then, at 3 years old. But that's the only word I grew up with. But the point was, I sat at a table with other Filipinos, not knowing what does a Filipino look like? Because I don't know. I mean, now I do it, but I'm rarely ever around other fellow Asian American Filipinos, especially drag queens, because we don't have any here. We hope to see more in Connecticut, but for other queens to recognize another Filipino in drag, that's nice to know. It's just, I would like to see more Asian American drag queens in Connecticut. There's a lot of POC performers for the races, but not that many of Asian Americans. So, I do know someone, he's not a drag queen, but he is a performer. He does do charity work with us. Patrick Dunn also knows him. It's also, his name is Vu Tran, and he is Vietnamese.
I love
And he was just, he's our current past monarch. He just reigned last year, so he's the dowager. But he's Vietnamese as well too. So, and we're for years we're the only two Asian Americans, representation in our organization. But that's really out there. I know this, like I said, could be other little Asian drag queens out there wanting to come out. Come on out, I'll help. But it'll take some time. But we're here. But I'd like to see more Asian American drag performers. And I say drag performers because I don't like to box anybody in as a queen.
Right.
If drag is what you put on every day, that's your drag. How you walk out, that's what you wear. And if you're a performer, you're a performer. And so that's how I see it. So.
I love that.
We're all performing. It's just not as cute. It's not all as cute.
Right, and I like that. We're all in drag. I say that often. That's why when folks are like, you have like a lot of style and the things and walk around in a crown. This is my drag. It's my armor.
I just went out 2 Saturdays ago to Gotham City, and went bald head, makeup, beat face, blouse, palazzo pants, heels. Just that's how I walked in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
So, gender fluid drag. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Victoria Falls is waiting to go out to be revealed to the world. She's just working on her makeup skills. So I'll just let you know.
Well, Lixabox is also waiting to work on her makeup skills, so maybe we need to work together.
Yes, let's do it.
I just learned from just doing it. Took some tricks. This is before TikTok, Instagram, all those tutorials.
Right.
It was trial and error back then. Those are the old school tricks. Old school tricks. Ask the question. How do you do this? And you find out what works for you. So.
Love that.
In 2018, I went to the National Queer Asian Pacific Islander Alliance Conference, which is the largest gathering of queer Asians in the whole country.
Ooh.
And there were like, I don't know how many hundreds of us in a conference, in a.
We exist.
And it was mind blowing for me. It was just mind.
Where was this?
In San Francisco. They do it every 3 years, I believe. Incapia is the name of the organization, and they have other regional gatherings. And that was the first time I really met so many Asian drag queens or drag performers, and just so many queer and trans Asian people. And Pacific Islanders, period. And I think it just, really opened my eyes, and I think to, that I thought I was like hot shit. You know what I mean? Like I thought like, well, I am, but I realized like our communities are actually organizing. Like there are actually like you don't often see it here in Connecticut, but there's so many networks, there's so many organizations of people that are cultural organizations, political organizations around the country of queer, trans, Asian, and Pacific Islanders who are out there, who are fighting against deportations, who are fighting against anti-trans legislation, who are fighting for Asian and queer representation in curriculum, right? And there's actually so much work, and I think that's part of what I learned is that, and why I love, I'm a facilitator, I'm a teacher, and why I love teaching our people's history, because I think there's so much erasure of the fact that we've been here for centuries, and we're and currently are doing so much work that just doesn't get taught, right? Doesn't get archived, and so even here in Connecticut, right? Like the fact that I'm just meeting the two of you for the first time, and I've never heard of didn't know you before this. It's sad to me because I really like y'all are amazing, and I want us to, and spaces like this are so important so that we can find each other, and also learn that, again, there is actually a lot of work happening, and I hope to contribute to that through my teaching and through developing curriculum and through, just creating spaces for people to gather with each other and just break bread, and just, so I think that's been one of the ways I push back on invisibility, is beyond just existing. Right. Is just trying to, as an organizer, as an educator, just trying to, I taught high school for a couple of years, and I had, queer Asian students that I worked with, and that was it was a dream to be able to be in front of the classroom and see people who I could see myself in, and be able to, just affirm them and let them know that we out here. And you have a legacy, and you're loved, and that.
What do you teach?
I taught social sciences and ethnic studies.
Oh, nice.
So shout out to all the folks that make us visible, Connecticut, and all the work around teaching Asian American studies. That they just won, they passed a bill this year, and so it's now a requirement for all schools, or K through 8, to teach Asian American history. Nice. And I think I just want to see more work like that, so that it can just it's not an elective. This should be part of the core curriculum. Exactly. Let's just we got to keep creating, and we got to keep I think that's how we push back, is organizing and actually and teaching. So, and I'm biased because that's what I do, but
right. And also, we have to talk about that conference so we can make sure we have a delegation from Connecticut to go to the next conference, because that is something that I know, if anyone out there was feeling or is feeling like invisible, like y'all just need to get into that space. And I want to give you opportunity to share anything around invisibility, but I also want for you to shout out the work that you are doing in the AAPI community here, because our work has already intersected, and I'm excited to continue and deepen that and do my work as a commitment to our work together, to make sure that we're moving in tandem with each other and not in silos, which often are the reason why we don't know we're existing. So I want to give you space.
And throw it on you. Spotlight's on you.
The way I push back against invisibility is, as young as I am, because I'm 15. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time.
That's the fun of it, though.
Yeah,
None of us
I
do.
don't know what I'm doing, and a lot of the time I exist as I am. I try and get involved as many things as I can. I'm like a very big person in like my school settings and like things like these. This is my second panel ever. In person, this is my first panel in person, and I try my best to educate because I know I'm not a beacon of knowledge. I don't know everything. I'm not a beacon of knowledge, but I do my best to try and share as much as I can, and I'm willing to, because like what you said earlier on like the last question about, and like you did too, about like having to basically almost suppress your true expression with your gender. I did that for so long because with my family, I remember I came out to my mom just being like, I walked in from school one day, I came home and I was like, I like this girl. And before I transitioned, I was just like, I like this girl. And my mom was like, yeah, tell me more. And then when I came out as trans, it was different. I remember I was outed. My guidance counselor had outed me to my mother, and I was like, not ready. I was not ready. I was like, oh God, oh no. But I remember I was like, I want to go by a different name. And my mom, at the time, she was confused. She was like lost. She didn't know what to do. We had already been struggling in many ways. One, because I was being bullied at the time. And I remember she said to me, you can't just pull a name out of a hat and expect people to call you by that. That stuck with me for like years. And I didn't know what to think about my identity. But now, as I'm growing, I'm more open about who I am, my transness, my queerness, my identity, everything. These are parts of me, and they're all beautiful. And I'm trying to be my most authentic self. Even now, most of my family is like, you want to wear skirts and dresses, but you want to be perceived as masculine? I'm like, yeah.
Heck
Yeah, but none of them would buy me a skirt, and I don't have my own money yet, I didn't have my own money yet, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna change that myself if no one will help me to do so. After school, I snuck with a friend. We went to a mall, and I bought myself clothing I wanted, because I remember back when I came out when I was 11. A little 11-year-old me was like,
Wow.
I want to wear heels. I want to wear this cute outfit. But I remember walking into a sushi restaurant, and I was wearing these gorgeous black boot heels. My sister, who's also Asian, cishet Asian woman, she was like, but heels are feminine though. Don't you want to be? It's like, I stopped caring, because who cares? Gender is a social construct that I choose not to follow. I choose to be whoever I am, and who I am is me. I'm Valor. And I push it back against invisibility that is forced upon me, because not many people will understand my experience, but they can listen. Anyone can listen and acknowledge. And like I said, I was bullied and by fellow Asian kids that were like, you're queer?
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, yeah, I am queer. And it took me so long to accept that, because a lot of Asian communities that were around me were like, you're not supposed to be queer. And it took me longer to come out, because I knew I wasn't a girl when I was 9 years old. But so many cishet Asian boys around me were specifically were like, you're not supposed to be queer though, that's so weird. My mom wouldn't let me hang out with you if you were queer. And I was like, I guess I'm not queer. For 2 seconds then, hold on. Back in the closet I go.
Yes.
For a minute. But the way I push back against invisibility nowadays is getting involved with any circles around me as best I can, and doing what I'm confident in, and doing what I feel like I want to.
And tail on to what what you were just saying is also, I just watched on HBO Max, and just like that, one of the characters, Charlotte, her daughter, biological character daughter, Jewish, she's going through the same thing as you. She wants to be a boy. She changed her name. All the teachers knew that she changed her name to Rock, but Charlotte didn't know. And the parent was like, is there something you're not telling us? She went to they called it not a bar mitzvah, it was a them mitzvah.
Oh.
Because they kind of were getting, to the point of, okay, she's going by pronouns, they. In a suit, tie, didn't go through the whole thing, but Charlotte did her bar mitzvah. So, she paid for the event, so she did it. But anyways, the point was the daughter was getting comfortable in her own skin, where she wants to be called Rock. Wants short hair, skateboards, totally 180 compared to her sister, who's adopted Asian. And pretty girl with a biological daughter, Jewish, wanted to be more like like a boy. So when you said about your name, that's what I remember. So just a little tidbit.
Yeah.
And you're making me think about a ceremony I attended a few years ago. There's an organization I want to shout out, They See Rainbow Parents and Allies. So they're a group that of South Asian, mostly parents and also other folks that want to, parents of LGBTQ children that are trying to create programming to engage other parents in loving their children and understanding the community. And they've done like, drags, children's story hour, and they've done, a lot of different programming. But when I was I lived in New Jersey briefly, and I got to attend one of a name change ceremony. There's a traditional ceremony in certain South Indian communities where when you get assigned your name, and there was a family that their child had transitioned, and they had a ceremony with a Hindu priest, a rabbi, and like a Christian minister, and they invited the whole community to celebrate their son's transition, and it within the Hindu faith, and I just cried and cried and cried because I couldn't imagine, just like being able to, again, like not having to be able to embrace both, and so I just wanted to really shout out that organization and that family and how much they touched me as an adult, being invited into that space. It was so healing for me to get to witness, seeing parents today that are really progressive and are really loving their children and supporting them. And not that they're perfect. None of us have all the answers, right? It's like, not like you said, it's not about knowing everything. It's about listening and really like listening to your child and listening to, or your friend, or your student, and just letting them tell, like walking along with them as they discover who they are, and that person is constantly evolving, and so.
And don't be afraid to fail, because failure is where our experiences come from. So it's okay to fail.
Can you shout out that organization one more time for our parents in the audience who want to make sure they get connected too?
Yeah, They See Rainbow Parents and Allies.
Yes.
They're on social media. They have a website. You can find them as Kamora said. You can donate. You can support them financially. There's so many organizations, and just if I can do a quick other plug,
yes, plug away.
An organization also, the They See Queer Helpline, DAKE. So I was a call taker for a few years with them, and they're a really vital South Asian LGBTQ organization providing peer mental health support. So people around the world would call, and a team of volunteers, other queer and trans South Asians and Indo-Caribbeans would be on the other end picking up the phone and just talking to people and helping them process whatever they're going through. We're not mental health providers, not crisis counselors, but just to have someone
there to listen,
that you can talk to. I think, and there's so many other hotlines like that exist. And if you're listening and you're a queer and trans Asian person of any age, it's not like we all struggle, right? You need someone to talk to, and you don't have someone in your immediate community or your family that you can talk to. There are, look up They See Queer Helpline. Look, there's other hotlines out there that you can reach out to and get some support, because none of us go through this alone. Like, I didn't get to where I am without a lot of people loving and supporting and guiding me.
Well, Valor, I would like to say that you picked the best name, because Valor is very valid. And it definitely denotes an energy that you have that sometimes enters the room before you even say anything. So you picked the perfect name. And again, if any of the parents want some of those supports and connections, make sure you get in touch with us at the Pride Center, and we'll make sure that we get you those names for those hotlines for parents, advocates, teachers, anyone who's working with young queer folks. It is up to you to make the first move and making sure that your young folks are valid. And also want to say that if there's other queer young people who are watching this, and you're in the New Haven or Connecticut area, please reach out to us. We have a clothing closet that is free of charge that you can come and go shopping in and do whatever you need to do, and make sure you share that with your folks at co-op. Y'all come a lot, but share with the other folks who don't know. But again, thank you so much, and we're gonna be closing up soon, so I wanna first, before we get to the last question, If y'all can tell our audience how they can find you or any work that you're connected to. Are you going to be at Pride performing anywhere? We got the rest of the month for Pride. And shout out some of the work that y'all are doing, because again, this work that these amazing folks are doing is actually part of what has been saving them. And it sounds like y'all creating containers for other folks to then save themselves, which is a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. So I want to start with you, Valor. How can folks support some of the work that you're doing here, organizing, anything that you're doing that folks should know about, anything like that?
Not necessarily.
Just get out there.
Not currently, no.
Just get out there
Yep.
and support our communities. Varun?
Well, I'll just say I hope we can stay connected, and I
Yes.
look forward to seeing all the things that you create in the future. And I mean, I've shouted out a couple organizations already. I'll also shout out AAPI New Haven.
Yes.
Jenny and the folks over there who are doing amazing work to organize Asian Pacific Islanders here in the New Haven area. And they just got started last year, in the last 2 years. And so if you're there, I think they're on Facebook, and you can find AAPI New Haven. And I work for Connecticut Students for a Dream. So we're an undocumented youth-led organization fighting for the rights of undocumented youth and families. So it also, there's many Asian undocumented folks. I think we're, the fastest growing population of undocumented folks in the country are of Asian descent. And so I would, connect with, follow Connecticut Students for a Dream on social media if you're a young person, if you're an educator and interested in getting involved or learning more. That's all I can think about right now.
You can find me on Facebook, Anthony Buell. I have an Instagram, CTSLUCIAV. CT's Lucia V. Same thing on Twitter. I do a lot of promotion, marketing for organization I'm a member of, so is Patrick, the Imperial Sovereign Court of all Connecticut. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that helps raise money for other nonprofit organizations, especially for the LGBT community here in Connecticut. Let's see, I just went to Pride last Saturday in Middletown. I went to Norwalk yesterday. I'm planning doing New Haven Pride since I'm a New Haven queen. Mostly I do a lot of marketing, like I said, marketing for charity events. We've raised money for the New Haven Pride Center, the Jim Collins Foundation, the Harvard
For Black Lives Matter New Haven.
the Harvard Gay and Lesbian Health Collective. I think we've raised, Patrick would know the numbers, but I think the almost over 20 years now we've been around that we raised about 500,000.
Yeah, it's definitely more than that.
Yeah, definitely. Patrick wouldn't have the numbers,
Yeah.
but we raised a lot of money for over the years for numerous other nonprofit organizations. So keep in touch that way and see what's going on in the drag world. So
Yes.
on my end. So
Connecticut Imperial Sovereign Court has been instrumental for youth programming for the New Haven Pride Center. Every year they donate to Black Lives Matter New Haven's book bag and school drive, where not only do they give us book bags and supplies, but they give us an abundance of so that we're also able to drop them off at other youth programs in the city. AAPI New Haven has been instrumental in working with Black Lives Matter New Haven to make sure that our work is not happening in silos, and that we are working together. And so again, make sure you follow C4D, make sure you follow AAPI New Haven, make sure you follow the Imperial Sovereign Court of Connecticut, because they are all doing amazing things, not only working in their communities, but deeply connecting their work to the Black and Brown communities of New Haven and Connecticut, and knowing that nothing that we win will happen in silos, and we always only win together. There is a misconception in our communities that Black folks, Asian folks, and AAPI communities aren't deeply connected in our work. And I mean, I've known you, Varun, and you're, the first thing I ever saw you at was at a Black Lives Matter rally, on the corner, putting yourself in harm's way and making sure that you directed everyone else that came to our action. You were not there to be on the newspaper. You were not there for that. And that's why I have always loved you and had such an affinity for you, because if you close your eyes, you wouldn't know that we weren't all Black and brown folks. We're out here doing our work together. And I want to say, Valor, as a person who works with young folks, I don't know I don't know why you think you're not an expert at this, but I can tell you that there are adults home today that were affected and inspired by what you shared today. So make sure that you keep on sharing it. And 15 years is enough years to have a bunch of expertise. And lose your virginity.
Fangirl.
You already know I heart drag hag. Stand you.
Not drag hag.
Yes, bringing it back. But again, I would love, on behalf of Arts and Ideas, New Haven Pride Center, Yale Theater, and all the folks who were here to witness this beautiful journey that you shared with us and your vulnerability. Y'all were very vulnerable with us. And again, that's the work of people of color. We're always vulnerable, doing all the work for y'all. So make sure that y'all stay connected with us. We love and honor you, and thank you so much for being vulnerable. Does anybody have anything they want to shout out before we leave?
Shout out to you.
Shout out to
Yeah, shout out to you.
Thank you.
Shout out to Patrick.
Yes. We out here.
Yeah, and shout out to all our ancestors, our queer Asian ancestors who've been surviving, thriving, resisting. So
they stand
wouldn't be
behind
without
y'all.
them. And we are, now we are ancestors. We're going to be ancestors
Yes,
to other people.
we
and
are
we are
living
leaving a legacy
ancestors.
behind.
I'll lead the
so-
way since I'm the oldest of the panel.
Yeah. Yes, I always say I'm gonna be the cool, problematic ancestor. So, on my altar, leave me some chips, some water, and, a couple Black Lives Matter flags. But thank you so much. Y'all are amazing. Y'all are very seen. And thank you for doing the work that you do for other folks in your identities to be seen, because I haven't heard anything other than your self-safety. You're here for other folks like y'all. And so thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to share space with y'all today. Y'all are absolutely marvelous, and I stand all of y'all from now on. You're stuck with me. Make sure you stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I on? Ooh. Thank you, Ala, and thank you to our incredible panel. Oh, wait, I'm probably standing in the dark. I'll come over here. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being vulnerable and sharing. I want to echo Ala and say 15 years is definitely enough time to be an expert. So I just want to say two quick things as we wrap up. We do have two workshops, one at 2 o'clock that Ala is hosting, which is a movement workshop. So if you would like to move your body and heal a little bit after doing some work today, you can do that. And then we have a separate workshop at 2:30 and or 3, and I say it like that because I don't remember what time it's supposed to start. But that is our racial justice workshop for white folks, and about being a good 3 o'clock. Thank you, Ala, about being a better ally and co-conspirator with our community. And finally, I hope you all stick around or come back for our keynote conversation with Dr. Justin Terry Smith, which is about health equity in the racial justice movement. So with that said, thank you all, and have a good rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wish.